welcome back to another episode of the Bradley University podcast. This is Angie Cooksey.
And I am Ben Jed.
And we are the hosts of the podcast because somebody let us do this, Ben.
I don't know if anybody let us do it. We just did.
We did just do this. But it's been so much fun. We are almost in 6 or 7 months of episodes, which is a little bit wild.
Yeah, we talked to a lot of folks on campus.
I know. It has become one of my favorite things that we get to do, which is share the stories of campus with people that maybe don't get space to tell their story all of the time or are doing really great work on campus, and maybe people just don't know them because they haven't had an opportunity to meet them. And so we get to see all sorts of people from all different roles.
Yeah, no, it's great.
So today's episode, we have Mike King joining us here, who is the Director of Development in the Advancement Office. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
We're super excited. We always start the show giving people a little bit of an opportunity to share their story and the path they took to the seat that they're sitting in at Bradley today. I think in a lot of ways it's the coolest part of the show that we do because we get to just learn about your experience and your story. And you told me something on the way in this morning that I hope that you share, and if you don't, I will ask later. What's been your journey like to Bradley and to the Director of in Development?
Well, I grew up right across the street from campus. So Bradley has really been part of my life from my earliest memories. I literally rode my tricycle on campus. And I remember things like before Hostler Hall was built, I went to basketball games in the field house. Mm-hmm. My dad worked at Bradley, so it was really kind of part of our, and my siblings, our early life. And so when it came time to pick a college, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I was going to Bradley, and I had one other kind of funny thing is my commute to grade school was further than my commute to college. I walked through campus to go to St. Mark's grade school, and but yeah, Bradley has just been a really special place for me from my childhood to my time here as an undergraduate and as an alum as well. And so after graduating, I kind of took an indirect career path, was in the Chicago area, was in Washington, D.C., back in Chicago, and then started working for Bradley about 5 years ago in development. And it has been a wonderful homecoming for me to come back here and meet new people, get reacquainted with alums who I've known for years. And so it's been a special place for me throughout my entire life.
For people that don't know, what is development and what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so it's that's a good question. For me, it's alumni engagement. I kind of lean a little bit on the friend-raising side first.
I love that word.
Yeah, it's for me, I like connecting with people about their Bradley journey and their Bradley story and finding common connection. And I've been really fortunate because of those early childhood experiences I had at Bradley. I can connect with alums on from a very wide range of ages.
Oh, sure.
Going back to alums from the 60s all the way through into the 2000s and recent alums. I served on the Alumni Association board in the early 2000s, so I that was a way to connect back to Bradley and with alums of different ages. And but getting back to your question, yes, I think development is about engaging with alumni, trying to find where their interest areas are with Bradley still, or trying to ignite areas of interest with them and let them know, that Bradley is still a very special place.
Yeah.
And, it changes and evolves over time, but there are some common threads throughout the different decades and eras that I enjoy kind of finding those connections with alums over those spans of years.
It's so fun.
So when you're going out and you're talking with all of these different alums, you've probably run across some really interesting stories.
Absolutely.
Are there any stories that really stick out that that you would love to tell?
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple that really come to mind. One was an alum who I met in my first year on the job. So this was back in 2021, and he's been around for a while and been supporting Bradley in a big way. Phil Wilmington hosts our golf outing in the Chicago area, and has been doing that for many years. He generously hosts everyone at a golf club that he's one of the owners of, Royal Fox Country Club in St. Charles, Illinois. And he told me, so he graduated in the late 70s, and he said, when he met me, he said, "Are you related to Dean King?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "Yeah, he's my dad." And he said, "Oh." He's like, "I owe my first job to him." And he said that when he was graduating in career services, you literally had to get in line. There was no, there's no online scheduling or anything like that.
Right.
So you got in line to interview with the different recruiters. And at that time, Procter & Gamble was coming to Bradley and interviewing, on a regular basis. And Phil kind of was poking fun at himself. He said, "I'm not a guy who stands in line. I wasn't going to do that."
Love that.
Yeah. So the interviewer with Procter & Gamble, I think he talked to someone in career services before he was going to leave, and he said, "Is there anyone who could help me review this list of students who I interviewed and see if there's any key people missing who I might be able to still engage with before I leave campus?" And the person said, "You should talk to Dean King." So he went, and my dad reviewed the list, and he said, "Yeah, there's really two leaders here that come to mind. One was a woman leader on campus, and the other one was Phil." And he said, "You should try to connect with them if you can." So the Procter & Gamble recruiter calls up Phil at his fraternity house, and Phil gets on the phone, and the guy says, "Hey, this is so-and-so with Procter & Gamble. I'm here recruiting. I wanted to see if you'd like to talk." And Phil hangs up on him. He thought it was one of his friends.
Pranking him?
Yeah, pranking him.
This is amazing.
So the guy's like, so he calls back, and he says, "Look, Dean King just told me I should reach out to you before I leave campus. If you want to have an interview with Procter & Gamble, get over here to Career Services in the next 30 minutes."
It's now.
Yeah. So Phil throws on a suit, runs over there, and he gets the job. Procter & Gamble hired like 2 students that year from Bradley, and Phil was one of them.
Wow.
And he said, Procter & Gamble has been renowned for this management training program. He said, that totally set me on my career path.
Yeah.
And he's like, if it wasn't for your dad, that never would have happened.
Do you hear that a lot? My husband's a Sigma Chi, so
Yeah.
I know the
Yeah.
legend and lore of your dad a little bit. Do you hear that a lot kind of in your work as people just have known him and then now know you?
Yeah. That is probably the most crystal clear example of an impact he
Sure.
made. But yeah, I've heard I got in trouble, that kind of stuff. I thought I was going to get kicked out, and he really kind of helped, get me back on track. And so I've heard different versions of that story many, many times. So, so that was, but that was really neat to have that first interaction. When Phil is such a great guy, and just to have that be my first interaction with him was pretty amazing. Yeah. So.
I think it's just such a good representation of really the Bradley experience, because I think so many people have a story that's like that. Maybe it wasn't somebody was their Dean King, right? Like
right.
Somebody made a call for somebody pulled a student out of the hallway and said, "I need you to talk to this person." And I love that that's the story you shared, because I feel like we get to hear it so many times, but I don't know that we appreciate how part of the Bradley culture it is. Like, that personal attention is who we are here.
That's right. Yeah. You're exactly right. There are many, many other people at Bradley, many of whom who have been here many years and decades, who I think there are similar stories of, who took that personal time to make that connection and make a difference for them.
So you've been part of Bradley since you were
In a tricycle.
right in a tricycle, right? And you're here now as an employee. You were a student. Your dad worked here. What's a story that you have from when you were on campus or as an alum that really like tells your Bradley story
Let's see here.
that you can tell
Yeah.
on a podcast?
Well, I don't know if I may be able to think of like one little incident, but I can tell you just from a broad standpoint, Bradley made a huge difference for me because when I came to Bradley, I was not like brimming with confidence. I didn't have a bad high school experience, but it wasn't like this confidence building experience. You know, high school is a tough time for some kids, and it's just, and it was one of these things where I wasn't really part of the in crowd, so to speak, and that didn't really bother me. But when I got to Bradley, things changed, and I think for me, my Greek experience with Sigma Chi was an important part of that. It wasn't the only thing, but that was a key part of it for me. Where, you know, some juniors and seniors encouraged me to get involved in different leadership roles in the fraternity and on campus, and that made a big difference. And so I started off, you know, chairing some committees in the fraternity, and then I got involved in the student senate for a year, and I was in the interfraternity council, and I held some offices in the fraternity chapter as well, and that just changed my my whole outlook and my confidence. And so that was a big that's really probably the biggest impact I can talk about Bradley, and not to mention, you know, the professors and people in the administration who had an impact as well. But that's really when I came out of Bradley, I was a much different person than when I arrived.
I think there's a story there that we probably, Angie, need to talk about more, which is Greek life and the impact. I know, like Sigma Chi, for instance, made a huge impact on Miles. Yeah. My brother-in-law was a Sigma Chi, huge impact, right? And I think there's a story there because there is leadership, right? There's so much that goes into that. So I think that's really, really interesting.
And I mean, as you were telling your story, that feels really similar to my own experience. I mean, I've written about, like, I remember the young woman that came to campus as at 17 and 18 years old. Like, that person was so different 4 years later. Yeah. And yes, certainly some of it was Greek life. I think it's the culture here on campus. It's the way that our professors pull things out of you. I mean, I remember professors in communications being like, no, you can do this. And I was like, I don't, like, I left one of my first speeches in Com 103, like, in tears because I did such a terrible job. And, like, now my job is to, like, talk all the time, right? And, like, that girl couldn't even picture this. Yep. So I'm so glad that was something that you shared, because I think you're right. We don't talk enough about the evolution that happens sometimes in college, and it's remarkable.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, the way I look at it is at Bradley, and in general, too, Greek life, and there's other areas, too, but Greek life is a great on-ramp to campus engagement. You can do it through Student Senate. You can do it through the Activities Council, service organizations on campus. But that was really a key on-ramp for me, because then I got involved in other organizations. Yeah. I was on the, I still can't believe it's still called the SABRC, the budget.
Love an acronym around here.
Yeah, I know. I like that.
I thought you were going with ACBU.
Yeah, well, there's another one. Yeah. So I was involved in SABRC for the budget and spending for different activities on campus. As I mentioned before, the Interfraternity Council, the Student Senate, but really for me, Sigma Chi was really the start of that. Again, Bradley's been, I think, a special place for Greek life historically.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you have to be Greek to have a really meaningful campus experience at Bradley.
No, but I do think that you do have to go all in and be involved at Bradley. Yeah. Like I'm, and it might be you are involved in your one thing and you are like all in on that, or you can be involved in 15 different things and be all in on those 15 things. Yeah. And I think that that's what's really a differentiator.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. I would totally agree. Shifting gears a little bit, because I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about your role in the connection to our alumni. And I would be curious from you, what would you hope to alumni take away from things like this podcast, and how would you encourage alumni to maybe re-engage if they haven't been engaged in a while?
Yeah. So that's really one of the key areas of my job, is to engage with alums who are across the spectrum. Some alums I engage with are all in on Bradley, and you just love those alums. And others have not thought about Bradley in 20 or 30 or 40 years.
Sure.
And just trying to reconnect with those alums and getting their interest level. And, in some cases, some people, they graduate and they move on, and that's it. They don't look back, and that's okay. But others, I think there's opportunities. There's life gets busy for many alums, and it's like, this is not the right time, but I still want to reconnect down the road. And sometimes you just get that timing right. And maybe someone has raised a family, and now they've got some extra time on their hands, and it's like, now I want to reconnect. I want to reconnect with Bradley. I want to reconnect with the people I was in school with. Mm-hmm. I just met with an alum and actually a couple in Denver 2 weeks ago, and he said, I'd really like to find out more about getting involved on the Bradley Alumni Association board. And so I'm connecting him with Tom Richmond, and we want to try to make that happen. So I would say to those alums, no matter where you are in your interest level with Bradley, and how connected you have or have not been since you've left, Bradley is still a very special place. And at some point, I think alums, when they think about the impact that Bradley had on their life at a really formative time, they will truthfully acknowledge, like, this was a really important place for me, overwhelmingly. And I want to give back in some capacity with my time, with maybe just, I just say, hey, help us be a Bradley cheerleader. Talk up Bradley among your friends, among, friends with kids who are looking at college, about really, I call it a Goldilocks school. It's like just the right size.
Yeah.
Not too small, not too big. I've got a great Goldilocks story. I had lunch with an alum in South Carolina a year ago. His name, I'll tell you his name, is Bill Ross. Bill graduated in the late 70s. He was a chemistry major. And I was kind of doing my thing saying, Bradley's a Goldilocks school. And he said, I'll tell you my Goldilocks story. So he was a chemistry major. He said, I really had no problem with chemistry in high school. He's like, I just had a great teacher. I get to Bradley, and he's like, I am lost. I'm in my first intro chemistry class, and I'm getting a D in it. I'm like, I'm going to have to change my major and do something else. So in early October, the phone rings in his dorm room, some weeknight, and it's his professor, Tom Cummings, who was the chair of the department. And he's like, Bill, I notice you're struggling in this intro class. I just want to see what's going on. Is there a problem? And he said, Professor Cummings, I don't get it. It's not clicking. I understood this stuff in high school, but this is a different level. And he said, Bill, I tell you what, after class tomorrow, come to my office. We'll work through some things. And so he comes and he does this like after 5 or 6 classes. Professor Cummings spends, like 45 minutes or an hour after class. And about within, 4 weeks or so, it's like it clicks. Yeah. I got it. And he said I was already preparing. I was going to have to shift to business management or some other major. And he said, but I stuck with it, and I finished in chemistry, and now he has a very successful dental practice in South Carolina.
That's awesome.
And he said, if I went to Purdue or Illinois or another large school like that, no way does that ever happen.
Sure.
The chair of the department is not going to call a freshman in their first semester saying, hey, I noticed you're struggling. And he was like, that's my Goldilocks story.
That's so great.
Yeah. So that really is a great illustration of the special place that Bradley is.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned, having people be cheerleaders. I imagine that one of the challenges of your role and the work in advancement and alumni is helping people see how they can be involved. And so, I think people often think like, oh, if advancement's calling me, they just want money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right or wrong, that's kind of the vibe, right?
Yep.
Everywhere. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a Bradley thing. It's just sort of an everywhere thing. What are some other tangible ways? You mentioned the alumni board, like there's a parents board at Bradley. Like, what are some other ways that alumni, whether they're 22
Yep.
or 82
Yep.
or 102, like, what could they do?
Yeah. So one thing that, Tom Richmond is relatively new to his leadership role in alumni relations, a couple years now.
Yeah.
And Tom has done a great job of really trying to ramp up our alumni engagement both on campus and bringing alums to campus, but also bringing campus to alumni and having events around the country, mostly in larger metro areas, but just doing simple things like basketball watch parties, but other receptions, special events. President Shadid has been really good about getting around the country. In fact, I believe he's in Dallas right now as we speak for a special event down there to introduce himself to Dallas alumni. And so there's an example of where if someone wants to raise their hand, and again, just another alum I met with in Denver 2 weeks ago, he's younger, has a young family, doesn't necessarily have the capacity to make a large gift to Bradley, but he said, hey, I want to help organize the next alumni event here. And so he's organizing a basketball watch party in January for us. He found the location. They've agreed to air the game. We're going to get in Denver has a very large alumni base now. For those you might be interested to know, Denver has over 1,000 living alumni.
And a direct flight to Peoria now.
That's right. Yeah.
So come
within
on
60
back.
miles of downtown Denver.
Yeah.
So it's that's a hot area for us to try to. And so he's organized an event. So that's one example of help organize an event in your area. Tom Richmond would love to have that kind of collaboration, and that's probably I think one of the best examples of something that's kind of an easy way to re-engage.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you don't want to be the lead, you can kind of help and say, look, I'll reach out to 10 of my friends and try to get them to come and come to the event myself. That's a great starting point, I think, for alums to reconnect.
Love that.
Yeah.
You have anything else?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, our last question on the show is always the same, and we usually get the same reaction. So we'll see what yours is. We talk a lot about other people on the show. We talk a lot about what makes Bradley so special. But we host the show to get to learn more about individual people. And so our last question is always, Mike King, what are you unapologetically exceptional at?
Oh, wow.
That's the reaction we get every time.
I think for me, it is truly meeting with alums and not thinking, oh, what can I fundraise from this person, but how can I connect with this person and find out more about them on just a human interest level. And it's not an act that I'm putting on. I mean, my boss might not be happy to hear this, but my first thought is not how much money can this person contribute to Bradley. And that's not even my second thought. It's more just connecting with them and finding a personal connection, mostly about Bradley, but sometimes it's a different connection entirely.
Yeah.
That is not directly related to Bradley. So that, I guess, if I have something I'm exceptional at, that's what I think I'm pretty good at because I enjoy it so much. So yeah,
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I do have one other story. So one little fun fact that people don't know about me is that I previously lived in the Alumni Center. which is kind of odd. You're
Like
thinking,
live,
you're probably
live?
thinking like, okay, Mike, keep talking because we're going to edit this out.
We don't edit the show.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, so probably not.
Yes. Now, it was before it was the Alumni Center. Angie would remember the previous Alumni Center.
It's my office. It was Comstock, right?
No, it
No.
was over on Glenwood. It was next to the Chi Omega sorority.
Yes.
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 It was a
Between
Tudor
Chi Omega
style-
and
yeah.
Sigma Chi and the parking
In
lot.
between, yeah, it was between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's a little brown house, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was 3 years old, Bradley had houses around campus, and they would let faculty or staff live. I guess maybe it was kind of part of the compensation package, and they're like, you can live there. So Bradley in 1971, I think it was, said to my parents, said, you can live in that house. So my parents, we moved into that house before it was the Alumni Center. And so I have memories of that. A couple things, there were 2 staircases in that house. One, the main staircase, but then one that went back to the kitchen. And as a 3-year-old, that is just like, what? That was so exciting to have 2 different staircases. There were also buckeye trees, or a buckeye tree, in the backyard of that house, which was really exciting for someone who's 3 or 4 years old. But so that's kind of a funny little tidbit so I really actually lived on campus when I was 3 and 4 years old. And then I think President Abegg finally was like, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. And so thankfully my parents did not sell their house, so we just moved back to our house about a block away on Maplewood.
It's a big commute.
Yeah.
Big commute.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
on that note, when we were walking down, I mentioned at the top of the show, when we were walking in today, we record the podcast in Hilltop Studios, which is in the lower level of University Hall. And you also used to spend a lot of time here,
Yep.
you told me, as we were walking in.
I lived here my freshman year. So my parents were like, you know what, you can live on campus. You don't have to stay at home. Just to have the full campus
They wanted to
experience.
shorten your
Yeah.
commute.
Yeah,
It was too
or
much.
they wanted to get rid of me.
Yeah.
And so so the funny thing is, if I would have lived at home, most of my classes were in Bradley Hall.
You would have had a quicker walk.
I would have had a shorter commute to my classes than in U-Haul.
Well, they wanted to
So-
send you away.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
they you
yeah.
wanted
You
to have
needed
that
to go away to
distance
college.
experience.
yeah. So I lived in the basement
Nice.
of U-Haul. It was just men on that floor, and then the rest of the entire dorm was women. So it was just kind of a funny thing, but so I have fond memories. Haven't been back here in a long, long time, but it's neat to be back here.
Welcome back.
Yeah,
Welcome back.
thank you.
Well, we're always so thankful for people like you to come on the show and hang out with us for a little bit. Thank you to the team at Hilltop Studios for helping us produce the show every week. And if anyone wants to come on, including our alumni, if you'd like to, if you're in town or even if you're away, and there's technology now, we can do these things
We're from the
remotely.
future.
We are from the future. Please let us know. As always, contact Ben, and he will set up time for us to do this. But from Ben and I and everybody at Bradley, thanks everybody. Go Bradley.
Thanks. Bye-bye.